Welcome. My name is Luke Bass, and welcome back to everyone who is already a subscriber to the YouTube channel. If you're not already a subscriber, please subscribe so you can see more great interviews, including the one coming at you right now, a professional women's boxer who is 2-0, undefeated, just a week removed from coming off an impressive second round TKO. It is Lia Lewandowski. Lia, welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
I have had you on the show several times during your amateur career, but never since you turned pro. So first off, congratulations going pro and now being 2-0.
Thank you. I know it's been a while. You've been basically like with me like since the amateurs and like to now. So
It
it's really
is, it's been fun, and I'm honored to continue to follow you since you turned pro. So let's back up a little bit. We'll get to the fight you had last week, exactly a week ago, where you won by stoppage, TKO in the second round. But let's back up. How did it come together, you going pro? How did you know it was time? I know you had a lot going on in your boxing career all over the place. You were on several times. It was awesome to follow you, but kind of how did you know it was time? And then give a quick summary of your first pro debut. Obviously, you got the win. You're now 2-0, but kind of summarize that.
So I remember, I think it was like before I even had my first amateur boxing fight, but my coach he basically had the whole game plan laid out for me. And he was telling me, we're going to get you to nationals. We'll get you nationally ranked in the amateurs. Olympics were right around the corner. He always said, win, lose, or draw at the Olympic trials right after I'll flip you pro. So after going to the Olympic trials and, unfortunately not making it through the whole process, we immediately just flipped gears and just focused on going pro because, might as well get paid for doing something that you like doing. So the hardest part was actually just finding the first pro fight because, promoters don't know who you are and they don't know like how many people you can bring in, if you're worth the investment. So right after Olympic trials, it was, probably January, and I didn't get my first pro fight until September of that year. And we were trying to get that pro fight that entire time. So it was like a fight camp from January all the way to September for that. So I was more than prepared, I think. Luckily, we found a local promotion in Philadelphia, and they found me an opponent from Puerto Rico. And she was such a great woman, and we still actually keep in contact to this day. But of course, like still from I even watching the first pro fight, there was still like a little bit of different nerves to it than in the amateurs. And that was probably my first fight in a long time that I actually was able to have my friends and family come to. For the amateurs, we had to travel the entire time because there just wasn't really many female fighters, especially my weight class in this area. So we're traveling to different states and like no one could really go. So to not have family and friends go to one of my fights for like 2 or 3 years to finally having my professional debut, everyone was out. And so there was a little bit of nerves, I could actually like hear what my friends and family are saying while in the ring. And it showed a little, but it was definitely a great experience. And my opponent had a tough chin. I threw some things at her. I have accidentally, dropped people in sparring, but she wouldn't go down. So she was a tough opponent. But so I won unanimous decision through the first one. So now I just had my recent one this past Saturday, and I did have an opponent who was a southpaw. I knew about 2 or 3 months in advance for this next one. So during that fight camp, I was actually like training just against southpaws, and then she ended up dropping out of the fight a week before the fight. So thank God the promoter, the R&B Promotions, Alex Barbosa was able to find me another opponent within a couple of days. And I give my recent opponent a lot of credit too. She picked up the fight under a week, drove from Florida, and I am so thankful for her because without her, then the fight wouldn't have happened after, off of a fight camp.
Yeah, well, I mean, great summary of both. Let's talk about obviously what's the mindset both in that long 9-month period of training, like you're in a pro camp, but it not coming together, and also the mindset of being comfortable still taking a fight on a week's notice after an entire 2 or 3 months. Like what's the mental fight game, so to speak? The physical game you've got, but how do you stay mentally sharp when you've been training for a southpaw for 2 to 3 months and then a week out? Obviously, you're thankful for the opponent that drove up from Florida, but that's a big change.
It's definitely tough, and I've definitely had my moments where I just almost gave up, but not quite, where I just was saying out loud, like, hey, it's not going to happen. Like, let's just move on. But it really just helped when your coach, your friends and family are there to help you stay positive about it. And thank God everyone that I'm associated with was basically saying like, keep your head up high. Like it, not even that they were like, it's gonna happen. Like you're fine. Like everything's gonna work out fine. And so even when they had the opponent change, I think by then I was so committed because it was a week before the fight. I was so committed just to fighting. I didn't care who they gave me at that point. Um, if anything, I had to convince like some of my peers. I was like, no, it's all good. Like I'm taking this fight. Who knows what the next one will be. And because there was such a big gap between my first and second fight, I also just wanted to like get my name, back out there and stay active. Because usually when you have your first fight, it's a little bit easier to just keep up that flow instead of, waiting a little bit. So I was like, I'm getting it in, like it's okay. And my opponent, like I just did like a quick breakdown of type of fighter she was, and I was like, no problem. So did not at all that one. But the first one, being in fight camp for about like 9 months was, yeah, it was brutal. But I mean, I didn't have anything else I was really working towards. Like that was the one goal. So, if it just so happened to be that I just had to stay in it, then it is what it is.
Well, it's really that determination, right? We talk about resiliency, the resiliency to keep training for those 9 months. On your most recent fight, the fight a week ago, it also sounds like you have a bit of a coach's brain in the sense that, along with your coaches, you broke down the fighter from Florida real quick. And how are you developing that? Your ability to kind of game plan and, of course, follow your coach's directions as well.
Um, because I am just like given my weight class, I typically fight roughly the same demographic of the type of female fighter. They're usually shorter than me, and just with like a significantly shorter opponent versus someone who's just taller than you, most of them have, and I actually thank a lot of my sparring partners for this, who give me different looks. But usually, if they're the shorter person, they have to find a way to come in. They expect the taller person to throw their jab and to keep the distance. So usually they will play off the jab, try and sneak in, attack the body. So just knowing that, and just from all the different types of shorter sparring partners I've had, um, I kind of relate like someone's fighting style to like, oh, they fight like this sparring partner, and I've been sparring with them for so long, so I kind of relate it to someone that I've like consecutively been training with. But it also helps that I was doing Team Combat League recently, and that kept me sharp. And I actually thank them a lot for my experience for this fight, because for having such a long time in between being in the ring for my first and second fight, Team Combat League helped me stay sharp for those, like, it functions with cities gather teams of pro fighters, and you fight their like another city's person for your weight class, but it's a single 3-minute round.
Okay.
So you don't have time to adjust. It's very quick pace, all or nothing. And all the cities, like they have like very great fighters on their team. So that helped me. It's like a glorified sparring in a sense, but that really helped me with my experience to translate back into the ring and keep me sharp.
Wow. Well, that is unique in and of itself. The Team Combat League, hats off to you for competing, but also everyone. How many like events did you do with them? Because it sounds like it's similar to like a wrestling match where you go through the weight class, everybody puts up their one fighter, 1 3-minute round. So how often have you been competing in that? And then we'll talk a little bit more. But that's very unique. It's the first time I've heard about that.
Yeah. It was pretty sudden. The head coach for the Philly team actually informed me. So for Boston, they needed a person to fill the 118 class. And again, there's not many women in this weight class in general. So he actually reached out to me to fill in that spot. And I think my first fight with them was April 26th. And I've had 3 Team Combat League fights from then to now. I think my most recent one was a week before my fight, and we were a bit iffy of taking it, but at that point we were like, whatever, it's great experience. um but it's a single 3-minute round, but I think like 8 people usually fight twice for what they call like a money round, and I happen to be one of those people that had to fight twice of the 3 times I fought with them. So technically I fought like 6 rounds with
Wow.
them, but again, like just like the quick pace, 8-ounce gloves. I remember my first Team Combat League fight, I just wasn't used because I spar with 16-ounce gloves. So getting back in the ring after so long and having 8-ounce gloves in that quick pace environment, I think my reaction time was a little bit slower, and it made me realize it. But then right after that, like it was getting better and better. And then by the time I had my fight this past weekend, it was like everything was in slow motion for me. And it just made it a lot easier. So I'm grateful that the Boston Butchers for Team Combat League were able to pick me up because it really helped me with my training.
Wow, that is incredible. Just the whole team combat league is it sounds very unique and very entertaining. I can give a hats off to whoever created that. It's kind of like the arena league in football, creating ways to be more entertaining from the traditional football. So great, unique approach to boxing for sure. Talk about a week ago, the first round. You talked about your reaction speed and kind of being able to see things. And obviously, you had fought just a week before that in more of a maybe friendly, sparring, but still pretty serious. So, what did the first round feel like for you? Obviously, the finish came in the second round, but what was working for you in the first round?
So I was still a bit nervous for the first round, and I was telling my coach, I was like, I don't know, like I'm because my first opponent, I had seen her fight before, and I wasn't so much nervous, but because it was a last minute opponent that I knew nothing about with less than a week to prepare for, I was a little nervous. And he was telling me that I should be nervous, and that actually kind of helped me with it. Um, so leading up to it, it just kind of made me game plan, I guess, harder or like really sit down and think of the combos I'm going to throw, ways to slip, and just like backup plan, B, C, and D. But kind of, I think again with Team Combat League because when I first started, I just assumed it was because you just have one round. I just assumed it's like all or nothing, no time to adjust, no time to game plan. You don't have corner time. It's just go in there, show what you know, and then one man wins, one man doesn't. Um, but then as that went on, I was like, okay, that's not working. Like, and then I was like, I need to readjust. So then I was like, okay, I will adjust within the first like exchange of punches now. So I took that like learning experience and translated it to the first round with her. So after the first couple seconds, because before it would be the first round, you kind of get a feel for them, and then you game plan for like the rest of the rounds. But this time, after just the first couple exchanges of punches, I had a general idea of her speed, her range, the combos she was throwing, and that definitely helped me just finish it in round two. But yeah, it was basically just like more of like a quick pace adjustment instead of just playing it out the entire first round. So then by the time the second round came, I was able just to put, everything together and end it.
Well, that also shows your development as a fighter to take what you've learned from Team Combat League and adjusting and kind of mentally figuring out what you're going to do. You had posted, I encourage people to check it out. You had posted your finishing combo of the TKO in the second round to Facebook, so I got to see it. Very nice, fluid combination. What do you remember of the combination? And were you aware that that was going to end it, or are you kind of just constantly thinking about what the next combo will be?
Well, there was that moment when I've done this before. My coach once taught me a combination where it's just, they say he says there's no rules in boxing. You could do whatever you want so long as it falls, within the rules to do. But usually I remember when I first started, like a lot of people try and say like, if you're right-handed, you have to be in orthodox stance. You never cross your feet. You have to move like this, like yada yada. But over time I realized, you can cross your feet, like you can dance in there if you get to where you need to be in time, like that's fine. You can switch your stance. Since then I've been switching my stance, so trying to hit my angles better with it. But my one coach, so you usually say, jabs and crosses or like every other hand. My coach once just told me that it's one of those funny things that stuck with me, but he was like, you can just throw straight crosses the whole time,
Sure.
just straight right hands. It looks silly, but he was like, why not? Like if it lands, it lands. So usually I've been doing the thing if I notice that they're, either sheltering their hands up and they aren't defending anymore. I usually will just throw like as like a final like blow, I'll just like throw straight right hands. And I think that's what I threw at like the very last moments. Cause like if the ref sees it that, someone's just taking straight right hands, usually that is when they would call it. And that's when he did. But it was just straight right hands, like to end it sort of thing.
Well, that is great. And it's a great reminder that developing your own method, your own flow. I think the switch stance when I was coaching, I thought the switch stance really helps you recover depending on how you slip, how you dip, depending on how your feet are. To be comfortable in both stances makes you faster because you don't have to reset. A lot of times in
Hmm.
boxing or even MMA, after a missed kick in MMA, there's no kicking in boxing, but in MMA or kickboxing, there's often a reset if you miss a kick. And I often thought, well, if you're comfortable in the opposite stance and you miss the kick, then you're able to continue to pressure. So great idea, obviously, from your coaches and what your development is. You talk about like where you are now as a fighter. You're 2-0. So as a pro, you're still new, but you've obviously put a lot of work in those two fights because it has been so long. Where do you see you ranking against the other ladies at 118, and kind of the big question to end on, of course, is what's next? When are you looking to fight, or is there a team fight league that you're going to be doing to stay sharp, or kind of like where do you see yourself ranking against the other ladies in your weight class?
I definitely still think I need a bit more experience before I think I could beat them. I mean, I do like they're I've seen how some of them fight, and I do think I stand a chance now. But in terms of just like silly mistakes that I know I make, that once I just clean them, it's like a me thing. Like simple mistakes, skill wise, I'm pretty confident in. Little things like slipping certain ways, or even just keeping your hands up sometimes. I think that also comes with experience, but there's just a couple more things that I just wanted to make sure were completely crisp, and probably with like a couple more fights. I think like by the time we're about 5-0 or like a little bit over is when we're gonna really start pressing some of these higher competitors in my weight class and fight for belts and stuff. We were looking for another fight, I think like end of July, maybe August, but the whole idea is to just keep it flowing and just to get in as many as I can. But we're always looking for another fight date, and whatever opportunities are out there, like we're willing to take.
Well, it sounds like a great mindset going forward. I can't wait to continue to follow your career, particularly as you continue to take pro fights, but your mindset at 5-0 or 6-0, and you get deeper into your career to really start going at some of the titles and stuff like that. Will be really fun to continue to follow you through that. Congratulations on a 2-0 perfect start to your pro career. Really appreciate you taking time a week removed. Really great to get your feedback. This is Luke Basin from MMA Fakecast with the undefeated professional women's pro boxer at 2-0, Lia Lewandowski. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
You got it.